Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will present an introduction to the Gemara Masechta Shabbos on Daf Gimel Amud Beis and Daf Daled Amud Aleph. Let's begin. So, the background information consists of one thing, which is that when it comes to Shabbos, although our Mishnah spoke of two Rishuyos, there are really four Rishuyos, and they are Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, a Karmelis, and a Mokim P'tur. And we'll go through each of these in detail by using a chart. So, first let's point out what are the Rishuyos Min HaTorah. Min HaTorah there are three Rishuyos. There's a Rishus HaYachid, a Rishus HaRabim, and a Mokim P'tur. Now, what's the description of each Rishus? We'll start with the Rishus HaYachid. The description of Rishus HaYachid is not determined by whether it's owned by an individual or by a group of people or it's available to the public. The determining factor of Rishus HaYachid is its physical structure. So if an area is 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, which is an area of significance, and it has walls around it from all four sides that are 10 tfachim high, that is considered a Rishus HaYachid. Now, when it comes to the walls that are 10 tfachim high, there are various ways of not actually having those walls, and it's considered that it has the walls. Just an example, if an area has two walls and it has a ceiling, so some opinions hold that the ceiling, being that it extends all the way to the end, it's as if it has walls extending from those two sides as well. But at any rate, the point is that a Rishus HaYachid has to be 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, and is surrounded by four walls, one on each side, that are 10 tfachim high. And one detail about the description of the Rishus HaYachid is, or the halacha of Rishus HaYachid, is that it goes upwards endlessly. It doesn't end at a certain point. If a person's in Rishus HaYachid, it goes all the way up to the sky. Now, Rishus HaRabim has two things that determine it. Number one is that it doesn't have the physical structure of Rishus HaYachid. It's not an area that's surrounded by four walls. But in addition, it needs some positive qualities that turn it into Rishus HaRabim, and that is that it's used by the public. So it could be streets that are 16 amas wide, public plazas. Some opinions hold that it has to have 600,000 people. But the general point is that a Rishus HaRabim, number one, structurally is not a Rishus HaYachid. It's not surrounded by walls. And number two, it's made for public use. The question is what extent, but the idea is that it's made for public use. And here it's a little different than the Rishus HaYachid in that it stops at 10 tfachim. Once it's above 10 tfachim high, it doesn't anymore have the status of a Rishus HaRabim, which is a very low height. 10 tfachim is about 3 feet. And then we have a Mokim P'tur. Mokim P'tur is any other place. If it's not used by if it's, for example, it's not used by the public, so it doesn't have the status of a Rishus HaRabim, but it doesn't need to have four walls, it's a Mokim P'tur. In Min HaTorah, the halacha is a person can carry from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid, but to and from a Mokim P'tur, it's perfectly fine to carry. However, the Rabbanan took the Mokim P'tur and they divided it into two categories. One is the Karmelis, and the Karmelis basically is an area that's similar to Rishus HaYachid and to Rishus HaRabim. It has similar qualities. And this idea that it's similar to both is actually indicated in its name. There's different ways of breaking up the word Karmelis to show how it refers to an area that it's both similar to Rishus HaYachid and Rishus HaRabim. At any rate, the other one is a Mokim P'tur. Now, what are these two cases? What are these two areas? So a Karmelis is basically there's different examples. Let's give a couple of them. A public place that don't qualify as a Rishus HaRabim. So, for example, you have an area that's a street that's not 16 amas wide. Or if you need 600,000 people, according to some opinions, and it doesn't have 600,000 people using it. Another example is if a person is in a Rishus HaRabim, and there's an area that's 3 tfachim high. So once something is 3 tfachim high, it's not considered any more secondary to the area it's in. It's considered a place for itself. And it's 4 by 4 tfachim. So now it's not a Rishus HaRabim, since it's such a small area and people are not walking there, it's above 3 tfachim. It's not either Rishus HaYachid, because there are no walls around it, but the public is involved in that area. They're walking there. That's a Karmelis. And a Karmelis, similar to Rishus HaRabim, only extends up to 10 tfachim. And a Mokim P'tur is, number one, above the 10 tfachim in the Rishus HaRabim and in the Karmelis. And another example would be an area, let's say, in the Rishus HaRabim that's 3 tfachim high, so it's separate, but it's not a significant area. It's not 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide. So it doesn't have significance of its own. It's a Mokim P'tur. So basically, just to summarize up to this point, and then we'll move on to the next column. We have over here 4 Rishuyos, Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, a Karmelis, and a Mokim P'tur. And the description is that Rishus HaYachid has to be 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, so it's a place of significance, and it needs to be closed in by walls that are 10 tfachim high, and it goes all the way up to the sky. And then we have a Rishus HaRabim. Rishus HaRabim is a place that does not have the structure of the Rishus HaYachid. It's not closed off, but in addition, it's used by the public, and it's a very public area. It has 600,000 people, or it's a 16 amas wide street. Then a Karmelis is basically those areas that are similar to Rishus HaRabim, For example, in the Rosh Hashanah, let's say you have a street that's not 16 amas wide, or in the Rosh Hashanah, you have an area that's separate from it. It's 3 tefachim high, but it's 4 by 4. It's a place for itself. It has some use. So that's a karmelis. And a makam ptur is above 10 tefachim Rosh Hashanah and the karmelis. And another example would be if it's a place in Rosh Hashanah that's separate from it, but it doesn't have much significance. It's very small. Now the last and final column is side cases, exceptions. But up to here we basically summarized the important information. There are exceptions, and we're only going to focus on the Rosh Hashanah for now, just a couple of them. If Rosh Hashanah is surrounded by 4 walls, and it's more than 4 by 4, but it's a huge area, it's 5,000 square amas, and in addition, it wasn't set aside for the use of a house. It's not that there was a house and this is like the yard or the field, but rather it was first just a field, let's say, and then afterwards a house was put there. So then, being that it looks similar to Rosh Hashanah, it's a huge area, 5,000 square amas. As a result, it's also the carrying it. However, it is a Rosh Hashanah. It's just since it has some similarity to Rosh Hashanah, the Rabbanan made exera that a person can't carry in it. And another example is, a well-known example, if you have a yard that many homes are attached to it, so now this yard is closed in, it's a Rosh Hashanah. However, it seems to be a Rosh Hashanah to the people. The person thinks to himself, look, I could carry from my house to an area that's shared by many. So I could also carry from my house to the street, which is an area that's shared by many. And there are other examples as well. One of the more known examples is a road that's open on one side that you need to have some indication to show that it's a Rosh Hashanah. But generally speaking, those are the 2 main exceptions that either that as a result of the perception of the area, we made exera that the person, it seems to him like a Rosh Hashanah, we made exera that the person shouldn't use it and treat it like a Rosh Hashanah. And with that, we basically finished the introduction. We get an idea of the different Rishuyas, because in our Gemara we will be discussing these various Rishuyas. Each and every one of them will come up.